I hit record at 58, so it's 8:07 on the 21st of January. And while I was watching the screen for BIPM.org, the French Institute of Weights and Measures, where they take all the time signals from the 200 atomic clocks around the world and average a signal and send them back, and they have the prototype of the kilogram. Bless the French. They lost to the English at Trafalgar. French bastards. You gotta understand the French. And if you live in Canada, you don't know any French. Like, I had a French friend. He was a real arrogant twat with no other friends his whole life. A real great kiter. He was like crank and pray. His attitude on kiting in 50 miles an hour wind, and he had a bit of a bear belly. He's fatter than me. I'm not perfect. I'm fat. I gotta lose some weight. But Olivier, bless him, he was a real asshole. And I was friends with him for many years until he ditched me as a friend. But he did smack me in the face. But he's typical Frenchman. And my ex-wife is French, but I still love my ex-wife. We're good friends. But I have other French friends. I like the French. But in Canada, like, for take example, maybe the Quebecois, it's a different breed. Basically, you can imagine, this is very contemptuous, but I'm going to be, like, factual. It's my idea. All the peasants of France left and went on these ships and endured squalor conditions. And granted, they weren't shackled to the foundation like the poor slaves were and given shit, but they still endured shitty conditions to get to Canada because life was shit. And my ex-wife, like, we're in, like, Fortune, Newfoundland, 2000 after she came and she followed up with me, and she's speaking English, trying to order a beer from a local man from Fortune. He spoke a broad Newfoundland accent, like broad English accent, maybe like Yorkshire, because the accents in Newfoundland didn't morph because no one moved into those communities. They didn't get diluted. They were established by who moved there, and they didn't change. Like, take Babel's, Newfoundland, where the O'Briens and the Gatheralls settled. It's a broad Irish accent because it wasn't diluted. It's fascinating, and Newfoundlanders speak fast, I believe, because it's cold. You cross the and then everyone lives so far apart. Like in England, houses are close together. They're like terrace houses. They're joined, and it's a tight community. But in Newfoundland, it's like a house on a hill. Like, why did you live so far apart? Because when you cross each other in the street, you speak so quick, you just want to get away from each other because it's so fucking cold in Newfoundland. And I'm off on a tangent now. I was digressing through the ecology of Newfoundlanders in England, and my point was, if I get back to it, and you know the point, it's about... Oh, I've totally lost my way. Quantum physics, and Pete Tong at a time, and the French Institute of Weights and Measures, and France, and Olivier, and the time is now, and I'm just trying to... I had an idea for a video, and I've lost it. Totally. Oh my god, I've only had 3 glasses of wine. Well, actually, I decanted my bottle. It was a 8-year-old Spanish wine, and this is my last glass, so it's like... Oh, this is really embarrassing, but I'm still going to upload this video. And I want to talk about, like, Morse code in my book. Yeah, okay, fuck that. It's the past. So the present is my book. My book idea. No, it's not even a book idea. It's all the books I have. So I have 21 books elsewhere. These 23 books elsewhere, and they're shit books. They're like Michael Crichton, theory tests, technical analysis, The Way to Turtles by Curtis Faith, an autobiography on Paul Oakenfold, binge trading, something about like fucking Pilates and schmoozies and the turtles and Annie Pohl's the shipping news. Like, she won the Booker Prize. Okay, great author, but it's all fiction and crap. Like, I mean serious stuff. Okay, here we go from the top. Resurrecting Sex. Okay, I was getting divorced. I knew I was going to be divorced. Okay, it was on the outs, and I thought I'd get a book. I'm heading to Halifax, my best friend, and okay, yeah. Anything I Can Do, You Can Do Better by Teresa Souter. Stephen Pinker's Canadian, The Blank Slate. 7 Deadly Colors, Andrew Parker's English. Richard Dawkins, The Greatest Show on Earth. The Golden Ratio. That's about, if you take A to B to C, the chords, then the AB to BC is to BC to AC. It's that ratio of the symmetry of the ratios of the 1/3 to 2/3 is beautiful. Like in terms of the Fibonacci numbers and the mathematics and basic mathematics. Like you look at the Fibonacci numbers, I'm gonna get lost now, so I can't jump that far ahead. But you gotta know what the golden ratio is. Like if you take like 3 golden rectangles and transect them at their median, and then you get the vertices of those 6 vertices and connect them with chords, and then fill in the planes that are surrounded by the chords, you get an icosahedron, which has Euler's characteristic of what? It's like, oh, what's the Euler's characteristic in topology? It's like vertices minus edges plus faces equals 2. So for a cube, right? It's like vertices is like 8 minus 12 plus the 6 faces equals 8 minus 12 is like minus 4 plus 6 is plus 2. And that applies for all polyhedrons. So it's just about, think about viruses, like maybe retroviruses. They have a icosahedron perfect shape, and each plane, the 6 planes, are an organized like connecting of proteins that form rows, and the rows might have the Fibonacci numbers for how you scale up from the base to the apex to the peak, and how many proteins make up each plane of that icosahedron virus. And that's a good example of how basic, like in math theory, there's pure mathematicians, number theorists, just in basic number theory, how that. But then we gotta jump to from like linear to 3-dimensional to, I guess, abstract geometry. That's just basically how that polyhedron applies to basic mathematics and how that relates to number theory. Like it's a bit complex when you know a little bit about everything. So that's the golden ratio, Mario Livio. Imaginary Numbers by Barry Muser. In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, John Gribben, he's British. That's like quantum mechanics and the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, and the video is going on 7:19, and timestamp is 2:14:15:16. Anyway, to go on, so it's about a short trip through time. George Johnson, Splitting the Atoms, about the history of the atomic clock, and God bless the fine spaghetti months for creating cesium-133 and its 55 tightly held electrons. It's 56 loosely held electron. It has a piezo electro distribution in quantum mechanics that can be measured. It's got like 6.192 billion vibrations, and we can measure the vibrations of that loosely held particle, and that's the SI unit of seconds. We need a timestamp. Like the swing of a pendulum can get like slowed down by dust and grease and friction and gravity, and the standard long pendulum Victorian clock has a time dilation of several seconds per week. But with atomic clocks, you got to have accurate billionths of a second, because without that ability to track time to the billionth of a second, we can't get an accurate GPS location, because without fudging the results, because each Galileo satellite at 24,000 kilometers orbit, there's 36 of them that were launched, or forget that, just go to the basic US GPS system. Their time dilations are shifted by like 30,000 nanometers per trip, I think, considering it travels several thousand kilometers. But you got to fudge the results to match up with Einstein's special and general theories of relativity, because without considering the gravitational time dilation of the satellite and the lower gravitational potential, which is the high Earth orbit, what's it called? Low Earth orbit's like 225 kilometers, but I don't know what the orbit's called, but it's very far away. But like, for example, we all know that when you fall into a black hole, it's a high gravitational potential, and that's when time stops. And you got to think about E equals mc squared, and know the algebra, just to shift that equation around, to know that how when an infinite, and when infinities appear in equations, they can't be cancelled out, you don't get good results. And that's why we don't have a theory of everything, because of the infinities, and that goes with the standard model of physics. But in terms of shifting that timestamp, and of course the satellite's going like 25,000 kilometers a minute, and we would change its time signature by Einstein's special theory of relativity, because you got to think that the next eclipse coming up on the 21st of November in eastern or maybe sub-Saharan Africa that falls, like, is it November 2012? It's part of the same cycle. That's like the 8th or 9th. But if you look at the earlier eclipse, that was the 5th or the 6th in the series, that was Einstein's 1921 total eclipse in eastern Australia that vindified his general theory of relativity. And you know the disappointment that he had when that war kicked off in World War One in Asia, or Africa, sorry, Europe, when he never got the results, and all those sensitive telescopes, sorry, not, science, think about Galileo. He invented the telescope. He could see Jupiter, his 4 moons. They were going around the planet. And each day he was addicted to get up and make that observation. He confirmed this was happening. And at the time, Copernicus and the fucking stupid Catholic Church, they thought that it was impossible for the moon to go around the Earth and the Earth to go around the sun. And Galileo saw this, and that totally vindified his heliocentric origin, outlook on the solar system. Like, wow. So in terms of church, they make up shit, and people believe the shit, and they made that shit up before there existed microscopes. Look at the small, and before we had particle accelerators, and before we had telescopes, and before we had, think about the scale of complexity. Like, I get my watch out. Like, we have particle smashers, microscopes, DNA sequencers. We have telescopes, and then we have cosmology that links all these scales of complexity. That's how beautiful science is. When you think about Richard Feynman, who won the Nobel Prize for quantum electrodynamics, when he links the interaction of the photon with all other subatomic particles stuff known at the time, and it lined up perfectly, and we have the Feynman diagrams, and he explained the magnetic momentum of the electron. Basically, its ability to line up in a magnetic field. It's Newton's pico-newtons, or I don't know the figures or the units of his measurement, but I know that his prediction in theory was to the 10th decimal place. In theory. And maybe about 15 or 18 years later, I gotta look up this research paper again, it was found out that experimentally that the electron's magnetic moment was either A, B, or C. A is less than, B is exact, or C is more than. And I asked my friend Sean in Ireland, and I said, this scenario, what do you think the answer is? And you got to think now in your head, is it A, B, or C? And I'll tell you, I don't mean to be patronizing or dumbing it down, but it was B. It was exact. Experimental results on being verbally practiced. Because obviously, I've had 700 milliliters of wine over the space of the last 2 hours. I'm not drunk, but I'm slightly not tipsy, but disinhibited, that I can talk quick and reference the knowledge I know about the world right now, and be coherent and have smart people look at all the shit. And if they know the same content, they totally get it. And if they knew more, they can go quicker and in the same space of time cover more molecular biology and cosmology and physics and science. But basically, he was exact. The electron's magnetic moment matched perfectly Richard Feynman's theoretical prediction to the 10th decimal place. And then you think about fucking Islam and Allah making the earth from sand, man from sand, and keeping the moon under his throne, and think about Christianity and not eugenics, but Hitler based his ideologies of eugenics on the Christian kind of belief system. Or he was a Christian. Sorry, that's next. Sorry, that was a. We don't want to go down that road. Let me recant. Erase back 20 seconds. Pretend I didn't say that. But basically, the Christian idea of Genesis. You can see Genesis, eugenics, and the pragmatics of the English language, and the whole history of the evolution of language. And go on the Royal Society webpage and look up why creation is wrong and evolution is right, and learn about who did that lecture. That was brilliant scientists from the University College of London. Sorry, tangent. I hit a dead road. So you can see how fractal and dead end. How many dead ends there are in your knowledge base when you don't get to the right word. But if anyone who knows this stuff, you know that it was the name is right. It's on the left Broca's area of my third layer of cells in not my premotor cortex, or my Broca's area, or my hippocampus. And where's memory stored? All that neurophysiology shit. I'm going to stop this video at 15 minutes. This is my longest video ever. But basically, you got to know science. So, and then we have Singularity's near where Ray Kurzweil on General AI Artificial Intelligence, the Essential Turing, but Alan Turing, Dawkins, Stephen Hawkins, and snowboarding. And snowboarding's not important, but Craig Kelly He died in 2003. Okay, so this is my results of my Craig Kelly NFB, not RIP, but non-functional brain state. Van Gogh, non-functional brain state. Dawkins is 70. Richard Hawkins is 70. Alan Turing is non-functional brain state. Ray Kurzweil, 63, is American. John Gribbon is UK, 61. Barry Mazur, that's on imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers. We're going to stop at 16 minutes, sorry. Andrew Parker, he's like 44. He's like Australian, but he goes to the University of Oxford. In the blink of the eye, basically he's saying that in the Cambrian explosion like 450 million years ago, when life diversified from the 9 phyla that were then to what, 39 phyla today, or is it 33 phyla? And why is it a prime number? But basically the evolution of the eye, the eye appeared over 1 million years, and that changed everything. Imagine like deep sea, and trilobites. And I got a friend I gave a 430 million year old trilobite. I forget the genre and species, but she's like a Jehovah's Witness, and she called my trilobite that I gave her the basic. He looks like an arthropod. He's like got a I'll draw him. Got to know. Trilobites. Basically, he looked like this, like a typical trilobite. That's my best idea on a trilobite. And there's little like antennae here. He's got like a little thorax here, and anyway. Pixie. Anyway, she fucking moved office and she left him behind, and he cost me like 25 quid. Anyway, she's a Jehovah's Witness. They hate evolution, and there's like 144,000 of those morons are gonna get into heaven. And the asshole who made up Jehovah's Witnesses, like in the 150 years ago in the U.S., he basically plagiarized the Bible and knew shit all about Egyptian mythology, and he was a thief and did some kind of wheat scams, and it's all a load of shit. And religion is a load of shit, because on February 4th, 1660, Giordano Bruno was an Italian cosmologist, polymath, and he said that the stars in the sky that are up there, they're like the same as our sun, that might have planets and there could be life elsewhere. And the Catholic Church hate him. They put a nail through his tongue, they nailed him to the cross, they burned him at the stake, and his last words were, the Pope wears a funny hat. Well, no shit, because we didn't know about the first Pope until 300 years after the death of Christ, because basically back then in the Dark Ages they burnt everything they found and just rewrote history, and maybe Jesus Christ wasn't even Jesus Christ, but of course he didn't break the law of science. He never came back from dead. He wasn't born to a virgin. Just imagine if he didn't have half his DNA and all the genetic diseases he'd fucking have. What an absolute load of shit religion is. Like, if you think that your 3.2 billion base pairs didn't have half that DNA content, and that some baby was born with half the genetic code, then you're an absolute moron, because you don't know about the Human Genome Project and interons, the conservation of interons across all the phyla, and all the descent with modification that you can see in molecular biology in terms of ENVs, endogenous ERVs, endogenous retroviruses, and where they appear across the branching. I forget all the terminology. I can visualize it, but I just can't keep up with my thoughts. Like, when you know genetics, you know that if you take statistics and you think about the statistics for this, like a common ancestor of life, it's like 10 to the power of like it's a 5-digit number statistically, but you got to know like how. You gotta know like basic science, and I've digressed from cosmology to all these brilliant people, and so I'm gonna read the 99th page, maybe the 69th. What's more funny, 69 because it has a sexual connotation, and the first book's on sex, and that won't be part. So we'll do just 20 books, and I'll do this in a separate video. And that'll be my 10-minute video on my whole sexual history for numbers and head counts and digression to stimulate your limbic system to get serotonin and endorphins and oxytocins and that whole rush of affectionate love. And Helen Fisher, who's the prominent neurobiologist in love. And you got to look up at TED.com for Helen Fisher, or go on YouTube, Helen Fisher, and she explains like love and attachment and lust, like the whole thing of the orgasms is a complete like joke to get us to fuck, to have kids. And then when the man like fucks off when the kid's 5 years old, that's a 7-year itch, and that's basically people have sex too early and they get addicted to the chemicals that sex gives them. But when those chemicals wear off, they realize what a bitch or asshole is that they married, and that's just how sex is. In terms of everything is linked, so when you know all the experts, if you watch all the TED.com lectures, and I've seen them all, and I've seen all the Royal Society lectures, MIT lectures, Google Tech Talk lectures. I don't have television. I watch all this shit. When you think on different levels of complexity, when you can link all your knowledge base and know quantum mechanics and genetics and sociology and physiology and cosmology and particle physics, when you can link all that, it all gets very simple how life really works.